Want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. July 13th and 14th, an advanced standalone tuning class covering various ECUs at Full Throttle Speed in Detroit, Michigan. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. Tonight's special guest on RealTuners is, well, I guess we're just going to shoot the breeze tonight. So climb in, sit down, buckle up, and shut up. Let's have some fun. And as usual, we have our normal panel of hosts. Bill Fowler of Big Hat Racing. Brian Barnhill of TunerTools.com. James Short of Shore Tuning. John Bewley of Little John's Motorsports Solutions. Mark Dalquist of Throttles Performance. Scott Clark of RealTuners.com. Scott Evans of Helix Tuning. Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development. Dan Parker, the movie star. He's blind in one eye and can't see out the other. And possibly a few of our previous guest hosts will pop their heads in and chat as well. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Now let's get this show on the road. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of RealTuners, May 15th. Seems that everything is holding stable in the industry right now, and we don't really have anybody special planned tonight. We're just going to chit-chat a little bit, have a little fun, see what kind of trouble we can get into. Maybe we'll talk cars, maybe we'll talk not cars, maybe a little bit of both. We'll just have some fun. Without further ado, let's say hello to everybody. Same group of people as usual.
Click. Unmuted.
Click.
I think we're special.
Short bus special?
Special ed.
Window licking special.
Lick the window. Yeah, exactly.
Turd.
Oh my gosh, two beards and the voice from Fargo is off the deep end. All right.
Oh, it's been one of those days. I'm primed and ready, and no beer required.
As much aggravation as you had today, I can understand. Well, I'd be pissed that I only had 2 beers in the fridge too.
What's everybody drinking tonight?
That was just to cap the evening off.
Yeah, that's absolute bullshit. What do we have to drink tonight? Tonight, courtesy of Jonathan Coleman and Dan Morin,
PBR.
I am partaking of a Bell Mead cask strength reserve that is bottled at 115 proof.
It sounds so special, I wouldn't even want to drink it.
Oh, it's not that special of a bottle. It's really good stuff, though.
Right.
That's my first bottle of Bell Mead, so it's I'm enjoying it.
It's what it's there for.
That's
to be
right.
Enjoyed.
Right. On a Wednesday night for no other reason than just I want to drink it.
Right.
Yeah, so I can one up the Four Roses barrel strength that I have in front of me is 116. But I will admit to having put a little water on it. So there you go.
You wuss.
Yeah, I know.
What I'm drinking was bottled right in here locally, close to me. It comes in a very special container made of aluminum. Dr. Pepper.
Ugh.
Does it
I have
count if
iced tea.
bottled it in my own kitchen?
Yeah. Well, what do you have? Oh, we got a craft beer. brewer on the phone.
I actually like Dr. Pepper. If I go to a restaurant and the choice is Pepsi or Coke and they say we have Pepsi products, I get a Dr. Pepper, not a Pepsi. It's closer to Coke.
Back to Barnhill. Tell us about what you're. Go ahead.
It's pretty tame. I just kegged a. It's a summer ale that came around to probably about 6%. Nothing special, just a pretty straightforward summer ale with just a little bit of citrus to it and a decent amount of carbonation. Something the wife will drink too, so it doesn't sit in the keg for 3 months.
Wow, I had no idea.
So I'm trying to do the math. If you drink the keg, that's equivalent to Bewley and I each having 3 fingers of bourbon.
Yeah, pretty much.
If I drink the orange juice I accidentally forgot to throw away like a month and a half ago, does that count?
Well, I don't know.
Here in about 45 minutes, it's going to count.
I put a little yeast in that. It's been sitting around enough, and could probably turn itself into some kind of alcohol.
I got everybody beat. The liquor store was closed in South Carolina when I was able to get there. So I have a $10 1.5 liter bottle of Woodbridge Sauvignon Blanc I'm sucking down tonight.
Gross.
God, man.
Did that come in a box?
I think I just
No, it was a large,
Hey,
very large glass bottle for $9.99.
Like a 40 dog of wine?
Some of the cheapest
exactly
wines are
what it
some of the
is.
best tasting ones.
That's what it is. The liquor store closes at 7, and by the time I got there, it was like 7:15. I was like, damn it, I'm screwed.
I mean, at least in Kentucky, I can get some fucking Mad Dog 2020 behind the convenience store counter when worse comes to worse.
I have one sip of Knob Creek in the cabinet. That's like in my emergency. I'm not quite there yet.
Dude, in Massachusetts, if you don't make it, you're screwed. You can't even get beer, wine, anything at the grocery store. So if you're not out the package store, you're done. You're not drinking for the night.
Weak.
Really
Yeah.
weak.
I'm almost afraid to admit this, but if I was unable to get to a liquor store for, I don't know, a year or two, I still wouldn't be out.
Yeah,
Right.
Bill, we need to do a bottle count. We need to see who's king of the bourbon. We need to do a bottle count.
Oh, I'm willing to bet you're king of the bourbon. My spirits shelves go all over the map. I've got whiskeys from about 10 different countries.
Well, I mean, I would let you even take some of that fancy shit like rum and tequila if you got some of that on the shelf too. But
Now it's getting more interesting.
It's
getting interesting.
Just an overall bottle count.
Yeah.
Is all I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know that many. I think I've got 122 bottles of spirits, something like that.
You might have me beat.
The bigger question here is what point in the season of racing is that higher or lower, and is that proportional to how your season is going?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for Scott Evans that I've been wondering about for a couple of days.
Yep.
And you all know that Scott does pro audio, like top level to the top of the shit. Did you see
Douglas is already drunk.
Mandalay Bay had a 700,000 LED video wall fall down?
So I don't know the full details. Only the people who are on that show would know. Nothing really has been released.
Told me that it wasn't my shit.
I can only make some guesses that it probably didn't fall like people think I dropped something off the table and it fell to the ground. It probably came down at a reasonably controlled rate because it doesn't look like it just fell. It looked like they had to lay it down. So it probably was, hey, this is going to come down and it's going to move as fast as these motors can move. So we're just going to take it down and lay it down. I can only guess and speculate. I'm not saying any kind of facts there. Motors do fail. It's the thing. We hang stuff in the sky over the stage, over people's heads from chain motors. Normally, there are no problems. Occasionally, they go bad. Just like something on your car dies, it happens with everything. So sometimes one will fail, or possibly something got moved that wasn't supposed to be moved, and it unbalanced the load on the other ones. I don't know the whole story. But typically when a motor fails, they start to slip, and the way it's wound, it'll come down. They don't just like slide out. It's not like it breaks a gear off and the whole thing just shears and goes through it at rapid speed, at gravity speed. It comes down at a pace that's, think of spinning a little tiny dial as fast as you can with your fingers, and as fast as it'll go is as fast as it'll come down. So it will spin pretty fast, don't get me wrong. If one actually truly gives out the ghost completely and just falls, it's still going to come down at a pretty controlled rate. It'll still make a mess, but it's not going to fall like somebody dropped something from the ceiling. It's from what I understood from friends, there was nobody really there to get hurt. They were all off on a lunch break or a smoke. They were all on a hey, this is a break time when the problems occurred, and so there were not a lot of people around when it actually needed to come down, and it was controlled from what I understand. So it made a mess. Somebody's going to have a bunch of fun doing some repairs. It looked like maybe some cabling that was connected to the back of it might have not moved at the same pace, and possibly pulled out some of the connections and did some damage to them. I'm sure a lot of the face side of it is damaged. Made a mess. I think the funniest picture was somebody has a pretty good one from up in the stands, and they've got an arrow pointing at the stairs that says, look, somebody stole the letter L, because the seats they skip the letter L. It goes K, JK, MNOP, like it skips the letter L going up, and I think that's the funniest picture I've seen of it.
So nobody died, in other words.
No, it's just some loss of equipment at that point, really. There were no people that got hurt.
Awesome coming down.
It might have just been like a slow, creaky kind of thing. It might have, it could have taken minutes to come down. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't there. It could have come down in a matter of, a typical motor moves at 15 or maybe 30 feet per minute going up, depending on what size and how it's wound and how the gearing is in it. So it comes down at similar speeds or double if it's just free falling down. So if you think about it, it's not that fast. I mean, even if it was coming down at 60 feet per minute, from the height that it was probably at, the top of it might have been 60 or 50 or 60 feet. So it might have taken 30 to 60 seconds for that thing to come down out of the sky if it was truly falling. But from what I understood, it was controlled.
Yeah, the pictures don't look like it just free fell and blew all over the place.
Was it you guys' equipment?
No, I don't know the company. I don't know the company offhand. I couldn't tell you. No, it wasn't us. I know that. I know the gear itself. I know the brand that was, because it's something that's commonly used in our industry. But that's about it. Doesn't mean it belonged to anybody specific. I mean, it could have been rented from any numerous company across this entire globe. I don't even know who the act was that was in there for it. All I know is whoever brought it down did a good job at placing it down, because it could have been a lot messier. Whoever did that thought about how to lay that thing down. Right. And it might have been like, oh shit, we got to do this quick, but they thought about, hey, we need to get this down out of the sky. We need to get it down now. It looks like somebody made that decision.
So anyway, excuse me. A lot of people asking about fuels. Man, that's a popular topic this week. Bewley, your posts lately are just setting the world on fire. It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, well, it is.
He keeps getting these phone calls. He's getting these phone calls, and he's like, get a different tuner.
Don't be a punk ass hero.
Know. Well, I mean, a lot of people don't know going from.
Yeah, no, it's not even that. It's just, for the last 2 weeks, I've had 3 occasions for people come at me and they're like, your cam's not doing its job. I'm like, what do you mean my cam's not doing its job?
It noses over at 5,200 RPM.
Nosing over at like 6,200 and blah, blah, this. I'm like, well, What fuel do you have it on? I got it on C. Well, okay, so what's the tune-up? 11.8 to 1 air fuel and
like you said.
Hey, hey guys, hold up. I seriously just had to reboot the computer. I lost power. Hey, can everybody hear me? Sorry, I actually lost power for a second there. I don't know what happened. Everybody there? Hello, anybody? Do I got you?
I've gotten bad batches of maybe fuel before. And you can really, okay, I like the simple. I like fuel that's hard to screw things up.
Everybody, we need to go back. We need to go back. I lost something there drastically in my computer. I don't know what happened. Like, I lost everything for a second. It rebooted. It shut off and rebooted and came back up. So I have no idea what happened. I lost it about where Bewley said, somebody called, basically when he said, what fuel you got, and he was starting to talk about, it was nosing over. So that's where I lost it. I apologize, everybody. I have no idea what happened there.
I'm sending out messages right now. Don't worry, we're going to put them on the post.
Yeah, my computer just went all died again. We are. It's still going. It's going. It's weird. I don't know what happened. Everything went down and came up. Yeah, but the stream didn't stop. So yeah, it'll be back. We'll give it a few seconds. I have no idea what happened there. Like, screens went black. That was the weirdest thing.
power. Listen, I can't afford to be drinking a bunch of audio issues tonight. All right. You're gonna have to get on the ball and do your job.
It's weird because I lost.
Darth Vader's the new tuner.
I didn't lose everything. I lost like 3 screens and then it came back, and I didn't lose the whole computer. I just lost a bunch of stuff, and then like Windows logged out, logged back on. It was all still there
right now because
it should be back in streaming.
It sounds like coming down to crap.
It's probably got to catch back up. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see. Okay, I see what's wrong. Hang on. Is this?
Oh, is it back? It takes probably 10 seconds to go out. Everybody's like blaming me. I'm like, no, yes, I mean, whatever. Can you hear us? I'm just going to wait till people say it.
It is. Whoever's turned on their video, please stop.
Oh, that was short. G turned it off.
I might just have to restart some software. Give me a second. Okay, see if that's any better.
We got good messages out here.
Oh, that's better. There we go.
Is
It should be clean now. Should come back. Give it 10 seconds on their end to catch up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I have no idea what crashed on my computer, but it's back going now. So
Everything
there you
went
go.
to shit.
First major problem in a long, long, long time. So whatever, have a drink.
Since I've been running it. Yeah, right. Usually it's me fucking it up. That's pretty good. All right, so we're back. Use the downtime to drink and write down your question or insults. Brian,
I had a week.
Such a good administrator, right?
It says it's not any better.
Not any better?
Yeah, still broken.
Still broken. It sounds
We've lost
good coming
17
from my end.
listeners now, Evans.
Oh, well, sorry.
YouTube saying it's good.
Yeah, it just had to catch back up on their end.
Yeah, it's good.
Everyone take another drink. Oh, and now it's better. And they're telling me
Yeah,
it's better.
the feeds are probably 15 to 20 seconds behind live for us at this point. Once we're into it for 20 minutes or so, it's usually about 15 to 20 seconds behind.
They're back. All right, cool. Sorry, everyone.
All Wired wants to know if you adjusted the injector end angle of the audio equipment.
Thank you, Sam Cavazos. I'm glad to know it's perfect now. We try.
Oh man, we need like a boot button for shit like that.
Who asked that question? Was it a Hildebrand question?
It said all Wired on Mixler.
Oh.
It's a username.
You adjust the injector in. Yeah, lovely. I love me some injector jokes because my stalkers, I mean, it's so fun to joke about these fucking idiots. Oh, yeah. Mike Lefevre's is listening. We should actually have him on. Mike, I'm going to get you on in the next week or two. Keith Turk's like, hey, do you know who Mike Lefevre's is? No, I haven't known Mike for like 15 years. Anyway, of course I know who Mike is. Those guys built a car, like a real car that went over 300 miles an hour way back when. They were doing turbo EFI stuff before pretty much anybody, but we'll get him on sometime. Bonneville, big Bonneville record holders. We still can't beat those numbers. So,
McJames 427.
Yes.
I'll keep it short. Just get a decent throttle body that doesn't stick.
What did he ask? Ask the question.
Oh, he says he's got one for you. He has a friend's car with an external Ford IAC, background E85 for 363, 10.5 to 1, Holly Dominator, LJMS 80 millimeter stick car. I hear the Ford TPS is not linear under 30%, so he's trying to keep it at 35% at idle, which is 950 RPM. If he closes the throttle body too much, it sticks. If I open it so that idle's at 35%, the damn thing will go up to 3,500 RPM at about 65% IAC. Because it's so high, the Holly won't begin ramp back to idle. IAC hold is 45%. Ram back to idle starts at 1,200 RPM above idle. Idle control starts at 100 RPM before idle.
Oh man, I solved that on Joey Tarpeo's car too. First off, I had to play with the frequency. I think I ran it at 300 or instead of 150 hertz or 150 instead of 300 hertz.
On a Ford IAC, they like to be about 300. That's what the factory cars do is 300.
Right. But double check that. Try either of those two positions. God, yeah, I remember struggling with that same problem on Joey Tarpeo's car. If I can't remember exactly what I did, contact me offline. Have that guy message Scott Clark offline, and I'll see if I can dig up that tune, the idle settings. We did get the Ford thing figured out. It just those are really tricky. Those PWM valves are very nonlinear behaviors, and the Holly idle control had issues with them. But I was able to work around it and get it working good. But anyway, hit me up offline. I'll dig that tune up for you. Fortunately, he's about the only guy on the planet going to be asking about that tonight, right? Dude, I got this Ford Mustang with a Ford motor in it.
Hey, I priced out a Dominator today for a 2000 Model 2 valve with a 4R70W.
I like the 4R70, actually.
I don't mind the transmission, but it was such a weird thing to price out.
I love the 4R70. I think it's great. You know how much money I've made off of those things?
Oh, Blaine Thiessen asked a question before we had our audio glitch on when head gaskets are going to be back in stock. And the answer is now, because I fixed my inventory level while we were sitting here bullshitting about it.
So here's a question. Chase Cole says, what's a ballpark estimate to build a competitive LS to run in DXP 235? 45 grand?
No, nowhere near it, dude. The fastest turbo car in DXP 235 right now runs a stock block, a stock crank, and a pair of stock cylinder heads, and a hydraulic roller camshaft. So, what? About the cost of a rod and piston 6.0?
That's not bad.
Throw a couple extra grand in there for an actual set of like trick flow ASCAS 220s. The turbo restriction on that class is so low that you don't have to spend a bunch of money on the motor to actually get it to be a front runner. You can actually be competitive in that class. All the money that you're going to spend in DXP 235 is everywhere but the motor, suspension, control, and time spent making hits trying to figure out how to make a 235 go down the track and go to the 60 foot with no boost controller.
Are we going to try to go back to the
when you say no boost controller, do you mean literally?
When I say no boost controller, I mean no boost controller. No nothing.
Gates.
It's you get a line from the manifold to the top of the gate.
Pin it shut.
So you have to figure out what you need to do. I mean, there's tricks and shit that you can do that I won't talk about on air and make public just because that's stuff I'm not going to out about people doing that may or may not be existing in a gray area when it comes to the rules of that class, but it can be done. I mean, DXP 235 is nothing more than Real Street 275 that was ran in the Carolinas by John Phillips and Shannon Young and Jason Rigney and those guys 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And they were going 5.0s on a 275 with the same rule sets back then.
So somebody on YouTube asked a pretty good question going back towards fuels. Can you explain tuning gas skill and E85 for dummies? Or somebody else also said tuning E85 using gas scale.
Can I ask my only question on that is what is the obsession with staying on gas scale when you're not on gas for the fuel?
Everybody does it for whatever reason, then they don't go switch over until they go to methanol.
Well, if
and it's still AFR, which is a pain in the ass.
If you're using a Holly, the obsession is that you pick one and then you use an advanced table to do your fueling for your ethanol. And it doesn't actually change the number. It changes it in the background. So you have to know what that ratio is on the gas scale to be able to do that. I have a spreadsheet with an example that I can show you that can show you what the differences are. I have a full webinar, but this is just, I won't show the other part of it, but this is just one part of the sheet here. See if I can get it up on the screen. That just has all of those particular things, Lambda, gas, E85, M1, to give you an idea of what those fuels represent. When we're talking about, we're shooting for 12.0 on the gas scale. Well, if you were to do the same thing on E85, it's probably a little lean, So we're going to think about Lambda most of the time because we know that really in Lambda, I probably want E85 as rich as it will get. It might be down as much as I've seen 0.72, 0.71 at the rich part where it's still making power and making fuel, which on the gas scale is 10.5, and on E85, that's 7.2. That's great for a number there. It's just the way you have to look at it is you have to think about it in a Lambda term to make it make sense because the gas scale really doesn't mean anything because it's not a real number with the 85.
It's all ratiometric.
That's it.
It's all ratiometric. So whatever the stoic of the fuel is 1 lambda. Just switch everything to lambda, which you can't really do on the Holly because they don't have a true lambda reading yet. But most all other ECUs have a lambda feature, and it just makes everything so simple.
I'll actually straight up admit my Miata displays AFR on the dash, even though it's an E85 car. And that's because my brother doesn't know lambda and he drives the car. And when he's on track, it doesn't make sense to him. So I just say, hey, these AFRs, don't worry about it.
I can very much defend that situation.
Right. And I'll even admit,
Yeah, I get where he's coming from.
Yeah. If, at a glance on track tuning, it's fine, but on a track, for some reason, looking a Lambda on my screen, unless I know that pegged it's this, and it's probably just because of my brain, and I guess the reason most people do it, if they've just trained their brain that way and never tried to work the other way.
That's exactly right.
It's easier for your
it's
for your
what
brain to look
what you're really used to seeing is what it is, and I'm kind of a mathematical mind myself, so I understand that 12.5 is going to be less than 1.0 on a gas scale. 14.7 is 1.0. If you take the ratio of that, and lower number is richer. This ratiometrically speaking.
Right, and I think that's the biggest thing people miss is Lambda, whatever scale you're using, understanding which way the number moves and what that means, because that's been, I think the biggest thing is people just don't understand what Lambda is, and when they get caught up in all these AFR scales, and once you understand what that is in ratio, and I think Lambda is a good way to drive that home. And you can't understand that even if it doesn't ingrain itself in your brain, like, Celsius or Fahrenheit or whatever. As long as you can understand it, then do whatever in my book.
I have a way easier time going from Lambda to different air fuel ratios than I do from Celsius to Fahrenheit, honestly.
Oh, yeah, because that's divide then and then add and then, yeah. I just know what
5/9 is just a bullshit fraction. I'm telling you.
That's the worst. And then when you try to go to Kelvin and Rankine, when you're doing math and stuff like that, yeah, when you're trying to do like theoretical airflow stuff, and I still use a calculator.
If we could just all go back to the metric system, it'd be so much easier.
Hey, the metric system never put a man on the moon. So
yes, I was going to say there's two countries in the world: the ones that use the metric system and the ones that put a man on the moon.
And the one that put a man on the moon uses the metric system in the computer that put the man on the moon. Everything was done in metric. Everything was in that. Has to. Scientific, they keep it all in metric when they can.
Well, I don't know about that, but this is...
We'll have to ask the lady that wrote all the code.
That's right.
Y'all know her?
No, I just always see that article flipping by my Facebook because I subscribe to space.com or whatever. It's actually pretty cool.
That'd be an interesting guest.
Is she still alive?
And now for something completely different.
We need some suggestions on some guests, but I like the Mike Lefevre suggestion. But we should go out and find it.
I think that.
Yeah, that'd be huge.
Suggestion.
And then we'll get Mike on here for sure. He's a good sport. And then also my Wheels Up Wednesday guy. He does the Wheels Up Wednesday photos. He always digs up the best pictures. It's always crazy shit.
Nissan opened the real can of worms tonight. How does timing change between different fuels?
Depends on the combo. This is Scott Clark speaking, but I usually tune. I'll usually start off like at the same timing for all of them. That's somewhere safe, and some of the fuels I might end up adding a couple degrees. I usually wait on the timing till the track. I just figure out what's safe, and if I'm on a chassis dyno, then I'll stop where it's picking up 10 horsepower per degree or something at the wheels. I just whatever it wants, and something that's practical.
I think that's the biggest thing people understand is like whatever it wants, and then they're just like, well, where do I start? And I'm like, well, start safe. You'll know what it wants if you're paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, start at 10 degrees if you have absolutely no clue.
Yep.
You'll figure it out.
I've done that
Make
with
it-
2 engines.
200 degrees.
Make
200
it a
horsepower per
turd.
degree.
Yep, make it a turd first, and you can always make it go faster.
Yeah, I think I remember I started at 10 or 12 degrees on some engine and wound up around 20 because it was just one of those combos. I was like, well, we'll start here. And very clear, very quickly, it wanted timing. And same as usual. Once we got up top and started slowing down.
But there's so many variables with timing because, there's so many different things that take that into consideration. You've got chamber shape, plug location, plug heat range. There's no one number, you can put on that because even with one fuel, let's take C16, for example, and you start off with C16 and an 8 heat range plug and you're fine till you get to 19 pounds. But when you get to 19 pounds, the plug starts showing hot. Well, then you got to go and you got to pull out a 9 plug and then you put the 9 plug in. And then all of a sudden the 9 plug reads completely different. And the motor all of a sudden wants a completely different timing map on a 9 plug than it did the hotter plug. So now it's, on another 2 degrees in. Timing is a moving target. There's nothing any of us can tell you of what it is unless somebody is taking all of these things into consideration, and somebody who understands how the camshaft is going to affect it, how the chamber is going to affect it, how the heat range of the plug is going to affect it. And that's a lot for any one person to understand.
And I think that's exactly.
But it's okay. It's okay. Like if you have an LS to just punch the timing number in the computer, right? You don't need a timing light.
You're poking a bear.
Here we go.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a day, people. I had a day.
Yeah. You don't need a timing light if it's got a stock computer, because the stock LS computer is the only thing that's got a learn program written into the damn software where it can figure out crank angle based on cam angle. So if you've got an LS that doesn't have a stock computer on it, you need to know how to use and what a timing light is for.
But I put the two dots together, John. I put them together. It should be right.
Right? The two dots on the camshaft.
Oh, that's the fun one.
I remember. I'm having problems setting my timing. Do you mean the cam timing or the ignition timing? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if they don't know, it's a good time to educate them, I guess.
Timing.
Spend an hour on that. That's a good use of your.
Which timing? There's, what are we talking about here?
Are you trying to make the timing chain, or are you adjusting timing chain, or are you adjusting something with a light in your hand? Which one are you fixing?
Yeah.
Day, right? I'm fixing the one where I'm turning the
spark
distributor
timing.
back.
The ignition timing.
Distributor. What's a distributor? Isn't one of those antiquated things that comes on Fords?
I don't know. They always make me dizzy.
No, it's one of those things. That's the second part they put on every new motor that come out of GM. The first one being a manifold so you can put a carburetor on it, and the second one being so you can adapt a distributor.
Laugh all you want. I won a race last weekend. It was with a carburetor and a distributor.
Congrats on that, by the way.
That just means everybody else was slower. It doesn't mean the carburetor and distributor was better.
It means it worked well enough to win.
Yeah, Mr. Dolph was proving he's not just a pretty face, he's also a driver.
Yep. I got to say, after hearing all the stuff you went through just to get that car so you could sit in it safely and properly, it sounded like you had a lot of work to get your body to fit the way you felt comfortable.
Well, that's because the guy who used to own the car was a few inches shorter than me and probably 150 pounds lighter. So it was a challenge.
So you're saying that Kirky seat felt like a sardine can?
I'm saying I couldn't get it low enough or far enough back.
Hey, Mark, serious question. Did you have any injectors hang open?
I did not.
Bet you won't have that happen with a carburetor.
Right. James, are you allowed to talk about coking hours?
No, the carburetor equivalent is a stuck needle and seat, but y'all wouldn't.
Oh, no, my generator did that over the winter when I left ethanol fuel in it. I know what that is. My generator has a carburetor, my little 1 horsepower thing.
Usually a stuck needle and seat can be fixed with a screwdriver handle.
Or a hammer.
Tap. Yeah.
Bang on it. Holy crap.
And you can't fix an injector with that?
You can fix an injector that way too. Sort of. I wouldn't call it fixed, but
well, depends on what part of it is stuck.
Around. Sewell's not on here to lecture us about not doing that, but
if he gets you down the track, then he can lecture me.
So do you have any?
I thought we just
tips for tuning in. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought we just ground the injector so it's open all the time in order to make it so it works.
Depends on which ECU philosophy you're using.
Only if you blame the cam guy for the injector sticking open because the cam's too big.
Is that the new blade tuner? Can we do that?
Yeah.
It could be the fuel.
Do you have any tips for tuning an LS2 in an airboat? They idle at 70 kPa with a mild automotive cam, 93 octane pump gas.
Yeah, I do. I tune a bunch of airboats. So set up your table so that you don't waste a bunch of time down in vacuum because they're always pretty heavily loaded. Because turning that prop even at idle puts a load on it, so you end up with a higher vacuum than you'd see in a car. Well, so what you do is you set up your fuel and spark tables so that you're not using a bunch of vacuum. Start them at like 50 kPa or something like that, so you get a lot more space to tune on. And then airboats are easy and they're nice, dude. They're steady state devices. It's like having your own dyno. You can literally just get a rough tune in, get it running good, and hold it at different loads and RPMs sitting there on the trailer. Make sure everything's strapped down and the dude's in the truck on the brakes. Because I've had one actually push the truck before on the trailer. But
you get the right prop with the right pitch, it'll move the whole truck.
Oh yeah, it'll put some real thrust out.
Slide
but you
right
can load
across
them up
the ground.
Get a bass tune. Yeah, and then what you do if you really want to optimize things, you go out and have the guy just having a fixed throttle setting, like half throttle or whatever, up on plane, and you can put timing in it and watch your GPS speed go up and down. Tuning boats is a blast for me. I like tuning boats. A couple of straightaway stretches, different loads and RPMs, and you're golden. So they always have a fixed load and RPM. So the dots will just travel in this diagonal line, mainly up and down the fuel and spark tables. But easy to do.
They got a great mechanical rev limiter too, so it's awesome. You don't have to worry about anything. The guy gets up on it all the way. That's all the faster it's going to spin. Sorry.
Right. But they're scary as shit. If you go out riding with some redneck in one of these things and you're down south, be careful because you don't want them to go wide open full on because they can't steer them after they're at max speed. It's just like a jet ski. So it's actually worse than a jet ski.
Super slow steering.
Yeah, that's
real
weird.
slow.
I don't know. I've done some drag race ones that want to twist off. Right.
If you think input drifting slow, one, you should have seen us in Atlanta. We got hosed in qualifying. The top 6 guys, both qualifying runs, dry, started pouring rain, then dried out, then right before our second qual run, pouring rain again.
Do you guys have to run a certain tire, or can you run any tire you want? How does that work?
No, it's so in Pro 2, so in our level, there's only 2 tire brands, and you run a 255. That's it. If you're the class up, your maximum tire size is dictated by weight, but there's only so many manufacturer tires you can run, and typically you have a contract with the tire manufacturer to only run their tire, because when you're using 20 or 40 a weekend, you take whoever's going to give you the best deal. That works with your chassis. So yeah, typically guys are running one compound. There's some variations. I mean, we make pretty wide changes in car setup otherwise, but yeah, there's a few guys that change tires. We actually went up on tire pressure in the rear. We debated putting our fronts on the rears because we run 235s in the fronts instead of a 255 because it was so wet that at that point we were just trying to get as skinny a contact patch as we could, and get some pressure down on that contact patch.
Interesting.
Yeah, we actually we started putting, loosening sort of what we normally do that would loosen the car up in the rain. Because if anyone's familiar with Road Atlanta, there's basically a long downhill section into, it's 10A and 10B if any road race guys are out there. So probably nobody. But there's a left-hander and a right-hander.
Guys that listen. Like Eric Anderson's listening.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's basically down a hill into this little valley that had 2 inches of standing water in it, and then right up the hill into a blind sort of horseshoe U-turn kind of deal. So the problem is all the water runs back down the hill. So in the horseshoe where the road race guys never drive gets dry. So you go from this wet to dry and then back from the dry to wet. And the problem everyone was having, we're sitting there watching everyone screw up that transition. And I sat there, I go look at our drivers like, hey, what difference does grip make in the absolute wet part versus the dry part? He's like, you can make a 40 PSI tire change and I probably wouldn't know. So I was like, all right, let's take grip out of the car. And he looks, he's like, what do you mean? So we take grip out of the car. So when he's going between those two sections, instead of going from, a level 10 grip to a level 0 grip and vice versa, he's going from like a 0 to a 4 or a 0 to a 5. So he can actually fill the car when he makes that transition. It doesn't make this huge jump on him. But yeah, we've got some in-car video I'll have to go through of how much wheel movement's going on in the rain to keep that even somewhat planted.
Wow.
But yeah, we were. I wanted to take power out of the car, and he wouldn't let me touch it because it was running good. He gets real upset about changing the tune middle of a session.
So I'm sorry, Brian. I missed part of that because I had somebody calling me on my cell phone. But did you start out talking about drifting and then go to road racing, or was it just all road racing?
It's so we were at Road Atlanta, so
Okay.
track layout. We actually shared the track with Time Attack, but just if anybody knows Road Atlanta, it tends to be road race guys. Just the layout of the course.
So, but you do drifting.
I crew for the drift guys. When I drive Time Attack, but I spend 90% of my life at the track with drift guys.
Okay. I've never actually gone to a drifting event, but they did put in a drift track here locally to us at our drag strip last year. And this year they have a $10,000 to win event coming up.
Is that, oh God, I know that event because we got some guys from Minnesota in that area headed out there to run.
Yeah, it's the top end dragways drift event or whatever.
Yeah.
So I figure at 10,000 to win and like 200 to enter. Is it
10 to win? I think it's 10,000 overall. I have to double check that because if that's 10 to win, we're screwing up because we weren't planning on going to that. I thought it was a $10,000 prize and maybe like 5,000 to win.
Call Sandback. Talk to Matt and ask him.
I'll have to check that because I mean it's a haul.
Our buddies run that track. Those are good buddies of ours. Yeah. They're good dudes.
Yeah, and hang on, ND Drift. I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, so Formula Drift is the most popular form of racing in the country.
Oh, don't start.
It is. I mean, it's
fun of some SEMA people. Brian's my favorite drift guy, but some of these SEMA crowd, they're vote for me for SEMA. You know, they just did. What's drag racing?
Yeah. It's one of those things. Like I make fun of it just as much as there's everybody else.
We actually got we got drag racer guys saying that Formula Drift is one of the best events any car guy can go spectate at.
Yeah,
I would have to agree. I used to dog drifting until my brother-in-law took me out.
It's a $10,000 drift challenge, 10,000 to win, 2,500 for second, 1,000 for third, and 500 for fourth.
Shit, we just were talking about building our backup car.
Now
I might have to rethink this.
Yeah, June 21st.
Oh, that's why I wasn't
Had the plans.
Oh man, I cannot make that event.
June 21st to June 23rd, 10,000.
So I was surprised to see at Brainerd. We were going just to the weeknight testing tunes up at Brainerd, which last summer, which were just freaking off the chain busy. Jim Hall and his son from TPIS were up there racing their road racing car, and then there was like a drift thing going on, practice sessions, and then obviously we were at the drag strip, and it was awesome. I was surprised at how active that was. I went to a drifting event in New Orleans a couple years ago that was surprisingly badass. I actually had a good time. It was fun because you're watching guys start off, at a low level or whatever, and then they're breaking shit, and then they're fixing it, and then they're upgrading, and then they go out and beat on it more and break it some more. And repeat the whole process, and it's actually pretty cool.
Actually, I'll have to do a little shout out for a buddy here, and Bewley will appreciate. If anybody knows a hookup on a drive shaft, Jonathan Hurst is a good buddy of ours, and he needs a drive shaft bad. It's he snapped in Atlanta, and we're trying to help him find someone that can hook him up with a strong drive shaft.
Make it happen
and work for it. So if there's anybody out there, the dude's doing it on the, everyone talks about you need $10, $20, $100,000 to make this dude. He's rolling in a 1,500 with an open trailer. I think in Orlando, he left Paducah, Kentucky with $7 in his pocket, knowing he was getting paid that week and couldn't afford to drive home unless he got his paycheck, and wound up leaving with a third place finish. And borrowed tires against what he was going to win for a podium to be able to finish in the top four.
Change. What's the drive shaft application, Brian?
It's a turbo LS car in a Nissan G37 chassis. Still running the G30. I think he's still running a G37 differential.
He needed the rear bolt-on yoke for the diff.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, he ripped the yoke apart. So he needs something with solid yokes. And I'm trying to talk into him a carbon shaft to take the hit because he's still running a T56 and he's still running the stock diff in that car, and it's got to be having hell. And the axles are built to take it, but the problem is we've cracked a carbon shaft and another guy did it, so he's a little bit wary of the carbon shaft, and there's some argument there. They should take it. It's usually a fluke when they break, but the problem is you can't really tell till they break.
Right.
I'm not convinced that's a great idea based on everything that would appear to go on in a drift car.
I mean, they're really popular in a lot of drift cars, and we've been, other than the one we broke, and it's not the only drive shaft we've broken between all of us. So I can't really say one carbon failure is any more than any other drive shafts. The idea is we run a clutch delay valve and we run a carbon fiber drive shaft. And the idea there is between the delay valve and how much the carbon drive shaft twists up versus, say, an aluminum or steel one, that's sort of acting as a damper in the drivetrain, and that's saving our, $7,000 whatever quick change or $1,000 per side axles, and just lessening how aggressive that hit is on a clutch kick. So when you just wide open throttle, slam the clutch and let it out, that it can theoretically take a higher twist. So in theory, it makes sense. I've seen a few break, but I've also seen just as many steel and aluminum drive shafts break. But I'm not a drive shaft expert, so I'd definitely be interested in hearing other thoughts on that, especially people that have a little more experience there.
Are you in a position to say which ones have actually worked on the carbon fiber QA1 or a Mark Williams, or where do you have to go?
We're running a
Drive
Driveshaft Shop 1. It's kind of their standard design, just adapted to, like I said, we're running a Jasper NASCAR dog box with a quick change. And that works really well. Like I said, we broke the one. They took care of it. Most of the guys run a Driveshaft Shop at QA1 or a GeForce 1320. There may be a few out there. Those are most of the bigger guys that most guys are going to. And I haven't seen one break any more than any of the others. And in fact, I can only think of about 3 carbon drive shafts that are broken that weren't due to impact with something. You nick them or you scratch them or something like that. That's obviously a huge deal where you pick up debris on the track. But outside of that, I really haven't seen many break.
Yeah, the GeForce Performance Engineering, for those of you who also know GeForce with the transmissions, so they do half shafts and drive shafts and all of that. They were showing some stuff for road race drift applications at PRI back in December. So I don't, I don't have expertise in that area either, but I just know that they're working on stuff designed to take those particular kinds of
right, and that's the Driveshaft Shop one is similar. And when we actually broke the Driveshaft Shop, we did talk to GeForce because we used to rent GeForce gearboxes in our cars before we just got a really good deal on a NASCAR takeout box. And
yeah, that's 2 different companies, by the way. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. It's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same company. It's very confusing.
Right. Okay. So anyway, we talked to a couple other ones, and because we had broken our Driveshaft Shop one, and we just hadn't talked to them yet. And we talked to them, and they pretty much looked at it and said, "Well, we can't really tell. It looks like it was a DLAM somewhere, so maybe a manufacturing error." But for those that I think I've told this story before, what happened is we were at Irwindale. We broke the drive shaft pretty much straight shear at a 45-degree angle. But when it broke, we do have a drive shaft safety loop, and it kept everything together as far as not hitting the car. But where the loop is, when the car came to stop, the drive shaft could droop enough that the front half pulled out and it sprayed trans fluid all over a running car with exhaust and everything like that. So then it caught the drive shaft. So carbon doesn't burn, but the resin does. So it caught the drive shaft on fire with burning transmission fluid. So inspecting the drive shaft after the failure is very difficult. So it's hard to say why. But they did take care of us and replace it. So we didn't look anywhere else on that failure. But I wouldn't say it's the majority of teams, but there's a significant number of teams that have switched to carbon shafts to lessen that load on axles and drivetrain components and stuff like that. Because we don't really need that instantaneous, right when you let go of the clutch hit a torque. Most of the time they're trying to do it just to make sure that the wheel speed stays consistent and the car doesn't grip up and it stays an angle.
Yeah, so both things you talked about were designed actually to reduce shock load on that and make the transition smoother.
Yeah,
So
and we've been pretty happy with it. Like I said, we've got one failure. I'm hoping that's it. I said we do keep a steel backup shaft at all times, because just in case something does happen, and we did have that ready to go in Irwindale when we did break. And our driver he put the steel shaft in, and he could feel the difference between the two, and it definitely was not nearly as nice or as smooth. So we'll try to keep the carbon drive shaft, but yeah, if there's anybody out there that has a contact in there, one, hook our buddy Hurst up, and two, we'd be interested to hear tech one way or the other on that.
Yeah, so Jesse Powell is the guy that I know at G-Force Performance Engineering. So that's the drive shafts. I can PM you with contact on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely.
And then the other company, by the way, which makes great transmissions, is G-Force Racing Transmissions.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're in Pennsylvania, whereas for you Midwest guys, G-Force Performance Engineering is in Wichita, Kansas.
Because we would go and just pick the transes up and when we were using G-Force Trans, because that wasn't far from us.
That's Chris Nichols' company, if I'm not mistaken.
Hey, is there a place to go find out where drift events are? We got people asking about.
So it depends what level you want to do. So there is a website called driftline.com that has a good line of stuff. So the problem you're going to be is there is no SCCA or NHRA of drifting. So there's no one, this is every event. Driftline was founded, I believe, by one of the guys. His kids run Pro 2 this year. He's actually a 15-year-old kid that's qualified twice now. He's the youngest ever FD driver. The kid's going to be a monster. He's already great. He's already really good. Once he gets a little seat time, that'll be insane. But yeah, driftline.com has a calendar of a lot of events. So they try to get everyone there. If you're looking at pro stuff, formuladcom, there's some great tracks to go to. Atlanta just passed. That's my favorite to spectate at. I just really love the Road Atlanta facility. There's a few coming up. New Jersey. Then we've got St. Louis, Texas, and Irwindale. Texas is a really good event. St. Louis is usually pretty good. It's new for us, and they're redesigning the track for us this year. So I think it's going to be better for spectators. But I definitely, if you're into it, and you could find something local, small to go to, they're still really very open, as far as, open pits and just really laid back, even up through the Pro-Am level. But even at the pro level, you're going to see a huge change in the style of driving. But it's still very open pits. They actually want you to, they have certain requirements on the pits being open and your stuff being accessible and out. And 90% of the guys will come out and talk to you about pretty much anything you want. There were fans cruising around till 2 a.m. Saturday night talking to pro drivers in Atlanta. So, there's I don't have an easy answer for that, but there's a lot of local stuff. Facebook tends to be 90% of it. There's a bunch of local drift groups. If you're in Texas, Lone Star Drift is a really good one to go to. There's a Club Loose in Texas if you're down in Houston area. Drift Indy and Riverside Drift if you're in Midwest, Ohio, Kentucky area. And then Club Loose 2 is also Pennsylvania and part of Ohio as well. And then if you're in New England, Lock City Drift and Club Loose North. There's a ton out there. But yeah, driftline.com has a lot of stuff there, and they have a collection of stuff. Evergreen Drift for you Pacific Northwest guys. But yeah, I would just go to driftline.com and go to their calendar, and they have a pretty good breakdown of groups and events. And they may not have all the events, but they're kind of groups. And if you're looking for an event in your area, find a group that's based in that area. I believe they've got links to their Facebook pages most of the time. And that's really the best way to do it. But if you haven't been to an FD event, or if you really want to, Grid Life would be my biggest suggestion if you're in anything like that. And there's a Grid Life coming up the end of this week at Gingerman Raceway in just outside Grand Rapids in South Haven, Michigan. And then there's another Grid Life the end of August in Atlanta. And if you never make any event and you want to make something that's just the coolest, craziest stuff to watch, pretty much on the level of LS Fest. I love LS Fest. And Grid Life is right up there with it for me, especially Grid Life Road Atlanta. So that would definitely be something I'd recommend checking out.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say check it out. It's fun to watch for sure. Guys are beating the shit out of their cars too, which is also fun to watch.
Yeah. That's that's where a lot of the send it mentality came from. So if that's your mentality, if that's the kind of stuff you like, then it's dumb. It's a big waste of money. It's a big dumb waste of money. But it's an amazing to watch and participate in waste of money. So
that's all forms of motorsports pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it's monster truck and race cars. That's the only thing I can ever put it on. And you can make fun of monster trucks all you want, but ask nine out of 10 guys walking down the arena. If there's a monster truck rolls by, they're going to follow it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the same thing. It's a fun spectacle. Everybody needs to go see monster trucks. Speaking of which, have any of you guys on any of the hosts here and listeners, have you guys been watching or watched the Formula One documentary from last year's Formula One season on Netflix? Damn, that's really well done. Worth checking out. I forget what it's called, but it's just good. Search Formula One on Netflix. There's a whole season from last year. It's interesting the budget these teams have. Holy crap.
Yeah, you can build a SXT, whatever the fuck it was, 235 car for the cost of what they spend on brake rotors for the back half of the car for one event.
Drive to Survive is the name of that documentary. It's amazing. I think I watched all of it in like a day and a half.
We binge watched it too. Yep, same thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you just want to watch what goes into it, and it's actually really kind of cool because Ferrari and Mercedes said they didn't want anything to do with it. They've got enough budget. They don't care. They don't want anything to do with it. So it was really cool to see some of the smaller teams, for better or worse, depending on if anyone's into F1, how you feel about Williams and that whole situation.
Most of us don't even know what that situation is, but
if you want to see some drama, look into Williams and how Claire Williams' dad and brother think of her running the program that went from a very winning program to not. There's some drama there. They were losing. I think they lost. They barely qualified for any, or not qualified. They barely had any points or no points one year. And the team principal is sending. There's a leak of someone's had a picture of a phone with an email to one of the team engineers, bitching about the fact that he was sitting on pit wall in shorts rather than khakis and a full dress shirt, because that's just not becoming of team image. And they were sitting with like 0 points that time in the season. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff there, but it was really good to see someone give you, like, it was pretty, I would say it was pretty open and honest feedback on it, which you don't see at that level. They're usually so controlled.
No, they were really inside the whole team management thing. They didn't go into enough details on the tech, but I can see why. It's not their target crowd, but
we talked about that. I think you talked, because people complain about the drift stuff, and for me and all of us here, we'd love to go into tech. You're not going to see tech on a drift live stream, because you start talking that and people check out. They really don't want to hear that level 90% of the time.
Right.
Which brings us back to the idea of motorsports as entertainment, as opposed to something else, which is, that debate will go on forever. But the whole discussion about why are, no prep races and all the other stuff getting big crowds and lots of involvement, is it because everybody that's watching that race is into the tech, or are they kind of into the show and how the show's presented? I'm not here to judge, but
Formula One, if you've ever been to a Grand Prix race, I mean, there's like 35 to 50,000 people, they say, travel around the world with that show to every event. So it's quite the spectacle for spectators. I mean, it's
that crowd is very different from anybody I think sitting on this call tonight or downloading it.
Soccer,
and they still don't care about technical stuff either. They're there for. They may not be there for the same reason some of us go to no prep and drifting, but they're still there for the experience and the probably a better word for it, but
I highly recommend checking out
the
the
scene and all that stuff. Yeah, it's fun.
Definite bucket list item.
I don't miss a single Grand Prix race on television. It doesn't matter what time of the day it's on. I'll record it, whatever it may be. But I know I haven't seen the documentary you guys are talking about, but I'm going to go look for it as soon as we get off this podcast.
Oh, you got to go find it, man! I can't believe you haven't seen it.
I apologize for the 2 days you're about to lose.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll do it.
Sorry,
I'm good. I'll watch it. But just the I don't know if just in the last 6 months, some of the stuff that's been in the news, Formula One racing news, on the aerodynamic stuff that Mercedes is doing with just brake rotors and
it's ridiculous.
The wheel locating pins, having air leave the inside of the wheel through the locating pins, and have a perforated center cap inside the hub to let air out from inside the wheel. Between that and all their new scallops inside the rear spoilers and front spoilers, it's unreal on what they're doing. And if you watch it on a regular basis, they're just kicking everybody's ass. I mean, it's not even funny. They're a second faster than everybody else per lap. So
yeah, and
I'm looking at some of the stuff they're doing aerodynamic wise to try to implement it into some wind tunnel testing stuff on our land speed program to say, hey, if it works for them, they spend billions. So it's got something there has to work on a lower or less scale.
Yeah,
the airflow management would be the thing that I think would work. When I mentioned about the brake rotors, F1 rotors now run between $15,000 and $20,000 each for each corner of the car for each track. So it's a carbon rotor, and they radial drill the holes, and the pattern of the holes and how the holes manage airflow is actually done on a track by track basis, if you can imagine such a thing.
Wow.
We're just talking the rotors. So yeah, it's a different level of things. Always stuff to be learned.
What media is that Formula One deal on?
Netflix.
Okay, I got that.
Our buddy Brian Esser is listening, and I think I'm going to get on a remote with him. He's getting his truck fired up tonight, figured out his bugs. What's up, Brian?
It wasn't that the tuner at the shop he worked for forgot to turn VATs on, was it?
No, it's not that one. No.
Yeah, I logged into Car Michigan from Massachusetts, and I'm actually stopping on my way to Grid Life Midwest, driving through Canada into Michigan, stopping to tune a car, and then rolling the rest of the way into Grid Life, because they swore up and down that they had this base file that would work, because he's still running a stock ECU on a turbo LS and a S550 Mustang. Goes to fires up and dies. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll be gone. I'm going to send you my HP tuners. Just hang on to it till I get there. Let me log in and make sure the car runs. And as soon as I open it up, tuner swears up and down BATS is turned off, swears up and down everything is set up right, but then looks at him and says, you can't tune this car without a MAF. You can't tune it on a 3-bar map sensor. How are you going to tune this car? Because it's all speed density. And I was like, at that point, I log in, injectors aren't scaled right, VATS is still on, just everything could be wrong. So that's how I started my week, was fixing all that crazy stuff.
This kind of reminds me of the conversation about John's post about, tuners.
Yeah.
The Frank's Red Hot tune.
Yep.
The Frank's Red Hot tune. We put that shit on everything.
I hate Frank's Red Hot, by the way.
Well, that's just un-American, Bill.
Oh, man.
Hey, I didn't say that. That was Mike.
That was Mike.
On that.
My bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was about to make a joke about being out in California.
I'm in Phoenix,
Yeah.
Not yet.
Right.
Give me a couple months, and then you could put all the Cali shit on me.
Speaking of that, there was a couple of questions. I've had a couple of questions PM to me while we've been on the show here, while we were talking about the figure skating of the automotive world.
That's fair. That's fair.
Myself.
That's harsh.
It's true. We got screwed by a
He's got to come up with a funky term for what you do, Bewley. It's going to be pretty hilarious.
Oh my God, he got screwed by the Hungarian judge.
That fucking French commie bastard judge only gave me a 7.2.
No, we hit one of our other buddies pretty bad, and it was a questionable call either way, but we got deemed for it, and is what it is.
Anyway, there's been some questions as to why I was talking about a tune-up on C16 making a motor nose over like it is. It's because the tune is too conservative. C16 has such an octane rating and it burns so slow. If you are too conservative with it, it will not perform like you need it to perform.
Right.
You cannot be scared of the tune-up on C16. You have to lean it out. You have to give it some timing. Otherwise, it's just going to bow up and it's going to tell you no. And it's going to nose over. And it's not a mechanical nose over. It's literally nosing over from the fact that the combustion is happening after the piston has started too far down the hole. Your peak cylinder pressure is way behind where it needs to be. And that's the reason why it's doing that. So you have to lean C16 out. You have to give it the timing to get peak combustion pressure.
It's scary to do, man.
Don't be afraid of.
You can't. Yeah, you can't be scared of C16. If you're scared of doing an aggressive tune-up and you're running C16 for fuel, you're going to have to man up.
Let the dyno be your guide.
You're going to have to man up, and the first thing you need to do is you need to be able to learn how to read a spark plug. If you don't know how to read a spark plug, you're always going to be chasing your tail on timing with C16. You have to know how to, because that's the only way you're going to find out how aggressive you have to be with the fuel. Not you have to be with it to get it to do what you want it to do. So that's where I'm going to finish with that whole thing with the C16.
I'm probably not say C16. One of my big questions on fuel and stuff in general. I guess on C16, what really is the limiting factor when you got to stop being aggressive?
When the motor no longer likes it.
Right.
When it stops making power.
That's normally what I've heard.
I mean, I tell people, don't be afraid to lean it out 12.2, 12.5 at 30 pounds of boost.
All right.
Right? It seems scary to some people. 12.5 on 30 pounds of boost, and it's going to love it probably.
Yeah, if you're in the 11s on C16, it's too fat.
All right.
If you're in the 11s, if your air fuel ratio starts with 11 anything, especially if you're using a gas scale, or
until you get to like 50 pounds of boost.
Well, most people that we're listening to are never going to see 50 pounds of boost. So
sure.
For the average LS,
11.3, good Lord.
So,
Scott,
but again, you're running for a mile. You're running for a mile. I've got him that fat because he's running a long time. You got it. It's outside of drag racing. It changes.
Yeah, there's always a condition. There's always, a but to that whole situation. But speaking here to 95% of our listener base that drag races, this is where you have to take that product and you have to take that fuel to get it to give you the result that you want to be on it. Matt Cole, I didn't miss your question. There's zero reason for you to even be considering Q16 in your truck. Because number one, you're not racing a series and you don't need that extra 20 to 25 horsepower that Q is going to give you over C. And it would be, you don't need the maintenance nightmare. You don't need the maintenance nightmare that the ETBE brings to your injectors, your fuel system, your fuel lines.
Cylinder walls.
You do not need those problems. Leave the truck on C16. We'll work on the tune-up and get it situated. I know you hate being aggressive with about anything, especially in that heavy truck, but we can work through it and we can get you situated. And something else I want to bring up. An article was printed today on an engine in Popular Mechanics. The new, and I'm going to be the first. I'm going to be the first one to say it. The new Ford Godzilla motor will unseat the LS engine as king of the stock bottom end.
Holy shit! Did that stick to the tape?
Oh my God! I hope everybody wrote that one down.
I hope you all wrote it down.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
I hope you wrote it down, and I hope all of you guys are listening to me. The new 445 cubic inch Ford engine, the pushrod overhead valve deal, will unseat the LS as king of the stock bottom end motor. There was an article printed today in Popular Mechanics that released 2 weeks or so, there's a new article that comes out about this engine, and we get some new technical data. Well, today in the issue of Popular Mechanics, there was some more little tidbits given. The motor is going to be 10.5 to 1 static compression stock. And the engine uses the ring package and valve seats from the same material, not the exact same valve seats, as the Power Stroke diesels.
Nice.
So that means that this engine basically has so that basically means this engine has an indestructible ring package in it. The valve seats will be able
we're not going to say indestructible, but they're tough.
Well, knowing what I know about how much torque a Power Stroke can take, I'm going to say the ring pack is going to be borderline indestructible.
Excuse me.
They also released a statement saying that the lifters in this engine are carbon, the axles and the roller bearings for the lifters are carbon nitrated. So we're probably not even going to be changing the lifters in these engines, because that's some stuff that not even some of the aftermarket lifters are doing.
No, if you've read anything about this engine, it's a really, really neat deal.
It's going to be an absolute animal.
So the real challenge becomes, in order to unseat this, and I get that people are going to get this vehicle with this in it, and they're going to run it stock bottom end, stock as can be, headers and intake, and call it good, and people are going to be doing some amazing shit with it. But what is this engine's price on its own going to end up being? Where does it fall in line versus an LS? Right? So, and that's what I'm pointing at, is nobody knows. There's a fair chance that the amount of technology in it... Right. The amount of technology in it probably means it's going to be a little more priced than an LS. So you get back to bang for the buck, and you push that gray line around a little bit to figure out, is it really truly unseating it, or is it just because it's that much better of a motor to begin with?
I think what John meant is
like the LS would be 10 or 15 years before it's the same price level.
Right. This is not going to be a quick thing. I'm not saying that I'm going to have one in a Mustang come November or anything like that.
No. Wasn't saying that by any means.
It is, once this engine gets brought to market, because the production truck that it's coming out in is not even getting released for the fall. I mean, we don't even have 100% specification sheet on the motor. Right. We don't know cam specifications. We don't know the cylinder heads. I don't even know the valve sizes in the damn thing. So we don't even really know a whole lot.
We had guys at the class that were helping develop on that motor and dynoing that engine. They came to one of our Florida classes.
But here we are. We have a motor, 445 cubic inches to start with. Think about that, 445 cubic inches.
Lots of potential there. Yeah.
Then we have a forged steel crankshaft stock, forged steel rod stock, forged piston stock, same ring package that's used in a diesel that can make 1,500 foot-pounds of torque. It's just everything is there. There's like everything that I know so far about this engine. There's only one thing that I don't like about it, and that's the fact that it does have VVT. And there's always going to be a way to, I'm sure somebody will have a key way to lock that damn actuator.
Oh, we'll lock that out. No problem.
Short order.
Yeah.
Or it's a single camshaft VVT. So that's pretty well understood.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go back just a little bit to the timing and fuel.
Okay.
Because Supercar on Mixler asked, what will take more timing, C16 or methanol? And I want to address how he phrased it. He says, what will take more timing, C16 or methanol?
Here he goes.
Don't think of it as what will take timing, because the last thing that you want is something that needs timing. So you should think of it as, how much timing does the engine need? How much timing is it asking for? But not, can I get away with putting more in it? Because ideally you want something that doesn't need a lot of lead.
It's wrong to think that more timing is more power.
Right.
I even saw a super tuner talking about that the other day.
Everywhere.
Yeah, like, I was able to turn the timing up, man. Make more power. I'm like, no, you just hurt more shit and you slowed the car down. But whatever.
Yeah, it's actually how can I make power with the least amount of timing?
Yeah, would be better. The goal is to make it so that I call it the peak pressure. It's not always the peak pressure. They call it the CA50, but the idea is to get the peak combustion pressure to happen 12 to 15 degrees after top dead center. So you have to light it ahead of time. Slower burning mixes, you light them earlier, but it has not, you got to think about it this way. Every degree that you have to light it earlier, more advanced timing means
you're fighting it.
That burn is spent fighting against a piston that's on its way up, not on its way down. So the ideal engine, you'd light losses. Pumping losses. Ideally, you'd light that mix at 0 degrees, but now don't go out there. You need to have a balance. I mean, if you have that efficient of a combustion chamber, like some imports want single digits timing, you got to be careful because that'll be closer to unstable combustion or knock. So you kind of
that's one of the things that makes the Gen 3 Hemi so badass.
Yep, minimizes pumping losses as dual spark plugs.
The Gen 3 Hemi is one of the few 2-valve overhead valve engines that requires timing be so low and has that kind of, you don't
chamber
have the
efficiency.
pumping. Yeah, you don't have the kind of pumping losses with it like you have in
That's why they did so well in the Masters Challenge.
Yeah, and Scott did some testing where they pulled a spark plug out of the Gen 3 Hemi.
Brad Nagel did it at Bischoff's, and then they had to add a couple of degrees to get the peak power. They had to add some timing, and it was down just a little bit on power.
Wow.
There's a lot of good data coming out of the Bischoff and Brad Nagel camp on those engines. Those are the guys that pretty much development of that.
In order to answer that guy's question about timing required where the fuels would like it to be, methanol probably, given its ratio and burn rate, it more times than not, methanol does require more timing lead to get your combustion event happening at the right spot than the other fuel that was mentioned. So you just have to watch what you want with it. It's on an LS engine, it's not a lot, but we've switched them over and the methanol ended up to get it where it wanted to be. It needed, 2-3 more degrees than the other fuel did.
But he changed the question on us now.
Oh, no, that doesn't surprise me.
He says he phrased it incorrectly. Which will make more power, methanol or C16?
Methanol.
Methanol makes more torque, which translates to power.
Methanol will, if everything is set up properly for the fuel, methanol will make more power. And but you have to be in the final 4% of the capability of the combination to realize that.
Me personally, I would prefer to just run the C16 because it's so much less maintenance.
Well, it's less maintenance and it's also easier to run.
It's way more forgiving.
It's more forgiving. Yeah,
that too. It's easier to tune. And if you're a rookie plug reader, you need to be, C16 is what you need to be. If you're trying to make big power, C16 is what you need to be on. Because I can tell you right now, in my opinion, there's not a fuel on the market today that marks a plug like C16.
Yep, C16 reads so easily on a plug compared to everything else. I can read plugs on just about any fuel out there with no issues. I can pull it out. As long as I got decent light to look at the thing, I can see a marking on it and I can tell you what it's doing. But with C16, it doesn't even have to be a very good light. It just has to be, the moon's out, I can see the mark on this one. I mean, it just marks it so well.
This 20-watt incandescent bulb, well, you can see this.
But so, Scott, you want to talk about what you see on the strap and what you see for the fuel ring about that on C16, just to help people kind of visualize that?
Yeah, if you think of it like it's a mini welder in your engine, and you think of when you weld and there's a heat source that pushes outwards from where you're welding and discolors the metal as it goes out, the same thing happens with your spark plugs. On the tip, it jumps up and it starts creating heat right there, and it basically welds more or less, creates all that heat that works its way back on the strap. And as the heat moves, you'll see a line that forms at the edge of it, and that line in general, we're trying to get it at the bend in the strap. Sometimes you can push a little bit further. You need the dyno to determine if that's beneficial in your combination or not. Naturally aspirated engines typically like to be a little bit further down on the strap than a turbo engine or a supercharger engine do. It just depends on the setup. There's a lot of factors that determine where it wants to go. But in general, if you shoot for the bend in the strap, you're pretty safe and pretty good to go, and then you can go to the track and try adding a degree or two or taking out a degree or two and seeing how it moves. The fueling side of it, you're looking for just a very, very, very faint light brown haze on the porcelain, ever so faint. I mean, just barely noticeable is usually about where it needs to be. But it's hard to read fueling on plugs. People like to do it. You're never going to get it right because there's such a wide variation with that little haze could mean that it's slightly rich or it's way rich depending on other factors in the system. So I tell everybody you have to have an O2 sensor for the fueling no matter what. And you have to find out what it wants on the dyno, or at the track you can check mile an hour and see if you pick up or lose any. I usually don't try to read fueling on plugs because of that reason, because it's so wide of a range when you look at it. Because one hue of brown, 16 billion colors that your eye can see, slightly different is drastically different in fueling. Same thing goes when people say, oh, well, I put an EGT in the thing and it reads way different. Well, if you haven't balanced the fuel with an O2 sensor, that EGT is just a reference to where you were before. It's not a number that you can even count on. Once you balance the fuels, then you can use the EGT to balance timing per cylinder at that point. And with C16, it's so super simple to read that plug. It's going to... The mark on C16 is like looking at a highlighter on a plug. It's just like, wow, holy crap, it's there. Especially if you have the right heat range. If you have too cold of a plug, it doesn't show up.
Well, one thing you have to keep in mind, I was thinking about it as well, and Mike Perduto typed it in the thing. NGK, with an NGK style plug that has the cadmium coating on it, there's two lines that'll end up showing on an electrode. Yep. One will be very distinct, and another one will be kind of muddled and kind of hazy. And the one that's kind of hazy will always be closer to the thread body. That's the cadmium burning off the electrode. That's not the actual timing mark. The actual timing mark will be between that and the tip of the electrode, and it will be a fair amount more distinct. So you can
call it shot the brown.
Yeah, it doesn't have a defined edge. The actual timing mark will have a fairly defined, threshold that you see the difference on the actual timing mark itself. But the CAD burn is a lot less defined on its edge.
You could take a green Brillo pad and scuff off a little bit of that, and it helps get rid of that second line that you'll see.
Yeah, the CAD burn. The CAD burn.
I do it before I even put the plug in. I scuff some of that off, and then when you put it in, when you take it back out, if you just take a couple quick nips of it, it'll knock off the loose flakes that you're actually seeing the edge of that cadmium burn, and you'll be able to see just the strap mark.
Yeah,
unless it's an E3, in which case it is the electrode coming apart.
Right.
I'm surprised it didn't come up in the Jack Beckman episode.
In racers in general, we typically throw in the NGK single strap generic plugs because we're pulling them out and throwing them away so often. It doesn't make sense to spend more money on plugs that are more expensive, especially if it doesn't make any noticeable power difference or noticeable fixing of misfires. Some guys will tell you they've seen differences with other plugs on the dyno. I don't know how much I believe because I just always buy the NGKs and throw them in and, there's a pass, throw it away, go to the next one. I want to know every time what my engine is doing, and I'm going to look at them as fresh as I can get them because the longer you run them, the less accurate that data is, which is why you got to do a hit, let it come down in RPM and then shut it off. No idle time on it. You want to just get down where the engine isn't, like you don't want to go through the traps and instantly shut the engine off. You want to actually let off the gas, let the RPM come down some, and then shut it off.
Coast around onto the return road.
Yep. I tell people, keep an extra set of plugs in your car. If you don't want to check all 8, that's fine. Pull out 1 or 2 of them, slap two new ones back in or 2 used ones back in and drive back to the pits, and then you can look at stuff back there. You don't have to sit on the return road pulling out plugs. Just get 1 or 2 of them out so you can look.
Coil and your injector and coil power for one cylinder on a switch and shut it off.
That's it.
Drive back. But here's the thing I don't like about that plan with plug reading. You're looking at an average of at least like 3,000, maybe 4,000 combustion cycles. and you're having to make a decision based on all of those. And the problem is when you're running down the track with more boost at one point, less than the other, that's why I'm all about
one thing.
Well, that's why my boost is all in within 0.7.
Right. So it's all there. And another thing about that is it's where you chop it, in my opinion, because you yourself have seen this too, Scott, because this goes back to the dyno session you had with the Gen 2 LT5 when the power failed and you started telling the story about how the guys were tuning it via the spark plugs, and they would bring it up 500 RPM, chop it, read the plug, make an adjustment at that RPM range, bring it up 500 RPM more and chop it. In my opinion, the plug is showing you the last
where you chopped it.
Last few data sets.
Let's call it the last half second, or there's no real way to quantify exactly how much.
So number one, though, those guys were naturally aspirated. Those guys were naturally aspirated, and that helped them a lot. What happens if your first part of your run, and you say you got all your boost in, but if you got all your boost in, then you're ramping it in with timing, and that has a similar effect on the plugs of moving things around. I don't know. I always worry about reading plugs, but having an incident where, the first part of the run, it was way over timed and boosted, but it was okay at the hot part of the run where I chopped it. I worry about that kind of stuff, but
I've got a good question about chopping it, because I don't race automatic transmissions, but what happens when you chop the thing and you're trapping 180 mile an hour and the engine's not running and turning the pump in the transmission?
That's exactly the problem, is that whenever that engine is not spinning and everything else is moving, you're spinning that tail shaft still. The internal guts of that transmission are still spinning, which is the reason why we try to get things back down before we shut it off, But in general, that stuff's spinning in there, and it's only getting lubed by whatever's left on the skin of it. It's not pumping through it, so you run the risk of burning up parts in the transmission over time from doing that. You're probably not going to hurt it off of one time.
I set those guys up with a way just to cut the fuel and spark to one hole.
Yeah.
And one of them, I remember even setting it up on a timer at the end of the run, and it would cut the number one. And so he could get a chop, but Kevin Smith shuts him off in the lights and he would know. But I've done that for guys that were paranoid about it, but wanted to keep the engine running.
Some guys do. I can't say that I've had them happen where guys are trying to go into neutral and kill them with not having a clean neutral transmission, or a transmission that doesn't.
You can't do it.
You can't do it. You can't do that with a Turbo 400 if you don't have a clean neutral. So that's obvious. You don't want to do something like that. But even then,
in general, you don't want to.
In general, you don't want to. But when I say chop it, I mean bring it down to idle. I mean, a clean neutral 400. You can shut the thing off at wide open throttle and then click the thing into clean, use the clean neutral option on the transmission, click it into clean neutral. And I don't know anybody that's ever had a transmission explode using a Turbo 400 with a clean neutral option.
John, would you explain the clean neutral to a lot of people on this call that might not understand what you're talking about?
The clean neutral option on a 400, what is it? The drum, if you don't have it and you try and go to neutral, the drum changes direction and accelerates to twice the speed that it was going. So the drum can explode. So the clean neutral I don't know how it's done. I'm not a transmission guy. So you can't, I honestly don't know how it actually works inside the transmission.
It disengages is all it does.
It allows the transmission to go to neutral without changing the direction of the drum and accelerating it to twice the speed of the tail shaft, or twice the speed that it was going, whatever that other RPM was that it suddenly
and it's something you set up on both the valve body and the transmission, and actually the way the shifter is set up. So
yes,
it is. Yes, it's an extra neutral in the valve body. It's an extra notch on the valve body, and it's a disengagement. Go with it,
Yeah, they shouldn't call it a neutral. They should call it a disengagement, because that's what it's doing. It's disengaging things, so instead of keeping things in there connected where it would reverse and it would start spinning faster. It just disengages things. So it basically self-cycles down.
I wanted to bring that out because I want people to understand that's not the same as just a conventional shifter slapping it out of drive into neutral. It is not the same thing. And I want everybody to be clear about that differential, because I think people might hear clean. I'll just slap it into neutral. No, that's not what we're talking about.
No, I just wanted to emphasize that. clean neutral 400s are reverse pattern. So they're part reverse neutral 1, 2, 3, and then another neutral on the other side of 3, away from reverse.
If you do want to shut off the car at the end of the traps and let it coast down, leave it in high gear, leave it as it is, and let it coast down that way. Don't try to shift it when you shut off the engine. You can kill the engine and let it go, but let everything else still roll and go and coast down while you're on the brakes and throwing the chute. If you absolutely have to do that. There are times when it makes sense.
Meaning leave it in gear. Yeah.
Leave it in gear, absolutely.
Yeah.
Your legs will thank you one day when your transmission doesn't blow up.
As will your transmission builder. I was at Hughes earlier this week, and we were having a conversation about this. And that is one of the largest things that creates warranty problems for transmission builders, is people not understanding what this distinction is. So it's kind of why I'm being a bugbear about it tonight. But it is something that has to be designed into the transmission and into the shifter to take advantage of it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, somebody had a question about an LS engine. Let's go back here and get it.
You guys are lucky that the reason I didn't go off on that spark plug debate, because about 30 seconds before you went off on that, where John's sitting there going, man, Clark isn't going off like he should. That's because Mary brought down our she made homemade macaroni and cheese. And I finally got my dinner late. Oh,
stuff your face on it.
Oh, that's what I was doing. I was sitting there going, nope, you're an idiot, but this is better. No,
I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't even.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I will preach on you, and you know it. I will preach. I will pull out the spark. I will pull out the old mantra that the spark plug is the only thing you can look at that has a front row seat to the combustion. I
want Evans to come to Bonneville with us this year. I'm working on a NASCAR-ish project with Joe Timney. Yeah. And I want you to come check this out, and you tell me when we run the A18 fuel out there or whatever we end up running, you pull the plugs out of these motors and there's no heat on the plugs at all. You literally can't discern them from a non-running plug.
You can. There's tricks to doing it. It's hard to read A18. It's really hard. There are tricks to doing it, and I know those tricks.
I'm going to
give you some insight.
I don't need it because I don't do any plug read. I mean, like I said, if the ground strap is there or not, whatever. Right. But I figured out. I mean, we do enough engine development on this one where I'm headed to Concord, Charlotte, North Carolina here in a couple of weeks to.
So Scotts, tell our friends what A18 is. Don't just throw this shit out and then it's magic secret stuff you can't know about.
It's ERL. Oh wait, no ERC. ERC, the Bonneville guys. That's the spec fuels. They have a whole range of fuels they bring to the event. And I mean, you don't go up to the guy and be like, hey, what's your C16 equivalent? Because apparently for fuel guys, that's a faux pas. But the safest thing he's got is this A18C stuff that's, to me, acts a lot like C16 and even better. Now, the C16 originated for guys with blowers that didn't have intercoolers. So it's a, slow burning fuel, and I'm not a chemistry guy, but I did literally write down, hey, we need to have a guest on who's a fuel expert. So we maybe talk to Tim Woos or something like that from Rocket Brand. But anyway, who's the VP guy?
I literally.
I know who you're talking about. Right.
I literally just forgot his name. Oh my God.
But anyway, we'll get somebody on here that can teach us more about things about fuel properties. But anyway, that A18 stuff at Bonneville it just doesn't put much heat on the plug. It doesn't really do much to the plugs.
Poach.
It's like the shit they run in turbines, right?
No, it's not quite that nuts, but it's still, I think it's slow burning like that. That's the theme. But anyway, it's really hard to read a plug. You're just like, the fuck am I doing? And again, I'll throw this out there. When we do like the big money combustion pressure analysis, you always get like an 8 or 10 or 12 degree difference between cylinders, and the engine's definitely happier. Power output shows it. The longevity shows it. I've yet to have a plug reader give me an 8 to 10 degree spread across an engine that matches that. So that's just typical, man. The most well-developed engines in the world, Cup Car, the most well-developed pushrod domestic V8 engines in the world, Cup Car engines, breathing through a common plenum. Those will have a huge spread in timing, cylinder to cylinder.
Yeah, reading those, you can see a plug.
It's not the fuel vendor this year.
you can see there's some tricks so you can see the mark on the plug, but it's only really telling you like where the maximum is. Because like you're saying, I didn't know it was that wide. I knew that it was a really wide amount that you were looking at. I didn't know it was like 12 degrees. So, but yeah, you can see it. It gives you a window. It gives you an idea of where you're at. You still got to really do combustion tests with it to know where you're truly at.
I mean, if you want to really, really, truly optimize it. No, I get it. I mean, it's stuff. I get the plug reading. It gets you.
And they use it out there because it's hard to blow stuff up with it, right? Is that my understanding?
Right, yeah. That's totally why they do it. The guy's like, look, if you, the fuel guy out there, if he's like, if you're not sure about your tune-up, then you run this, because then you will not be coming back to me blaming the fuel. It may be down 40 horsepower because you used the wrong fuel, but it ain't going to melt the motor down. And again, that's what I love about C16. It removes so many variables. Hey, I'm a noob tuner. Hey, this is the first time I've done this. Hey, I just went to Scott's class, or I went to Tom Kaiser's class at Holly, and this is my first time on this motor that I spent $30,000 on. Well, hey, start with something like C16, because you'll never be like, damn it, I overtimed it and ruined the motor, or damn it, I ran it too lean, you know.
And $16 a gallon. $16 a gallon is far cheaper than $10,000 worth of motor repairs.
You're gonna burn 2 gallons at the dyno at most.
Yeah,
not even that probably. You know, you just go to the night at the track, might burn 3.
Same amount of fuel you burn with pump gas. I mean,
right.
The good thing about gas too is you don't burn as much as methanol or ethanol.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, methanol. You're refilling the tank every other pull in the dyno. Where with C16, you put 5 gallons in the tank, it lasts all day.
I know, and look how lean you run the shit. So you literally don't burn anything.
Right. And C6,
maybe you guys that don't go more than 25 seconds, but
listen to this.
Well, so I actually had a question on that, because it would be really easy for me to we're debating a fuel change on our drift car, for example, because we're rolling.
What do you run right now, Brian? What do you guys run?
We run Renegade 102 octane. It's nothing crazy. And getting this driver off pump gas was a
big move. So I get
this is his first car not on pump gas. So. And the 102 octane's okay. I mean, we're running, 14, 15 degrees of timing or so, and it's making decent power. But IATs aren't horrible. They creep up there a little bit, and we've debated moving to a fuel, and we're debating what that is. And, it'd be easy for me to say, hey, let's put C16 in there. But we go through, 20 gallons or more in a weekend. That's not an insignificant price difference.
There you go,
versus, say, VP 110 was something I was looking at, and then I haven't done enough with leaded fuels, because it's actually not allowed in so many classes I'm used to running, of what life we can expect on O2 sensors and stuff like that on a leaded fuel. But yeah, I guess the decision factor on, let's say,
it's all about placement.
You've got, right. But let's say you've got a team where, they can, it's not just about they need the fuel because it's safe, because that's the only way to keep the engine safe. But taking a step back of, at what level, other fuels that guys would look at that aren't wanting to spend $22 a gallon on say something that does a little bit different track time, or a little more track time or something like that, but maybe with less horsepower.
I would look,
drift, road race, all that. Yeah.
If I was you, I would be looking at MS 109.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the other one on the list. It's obviously a little bit more than the 110 leaded, which is where our driver was looking, because it's his pocket I'm paying for this out of in the end.
Right.
And I've done some stuff on the VP 110 and it's been happy, but the MS 109 to me looked like a much more attractive fuel. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's unleaded. You'll save O2 sensors with it versus the 110 leaded or the Sunoco 110.
It's but
the MS 109 brings some of the other fuel system maintenance things with it.
Yes, it does, because it is an oxygenated fuel, but it's not to the same. It doesn't use the same stuff like Q uses. The ETBE and Q, which is like 2 steps away from hydrochloric acid, in my opinion. It's not that bad. If you use MS 109 in the race car, and then before it goes in the trailer, you put it back in the jug and you throw some 93 in it, you start it up and you run it,
and you're good. Yep,
you're good to go.
Yeah. That was,
to get those.
The MS-109 also isn't as tolerant of high IATs as the C16 is, but it still does go quite a ways up there. So you're still probably fine.
In my opinion, it would probably do better than the 104 that you're on now.
Yeah,
for
sure.
We're not seeing crazy. We're still intercooled, but it's the Magnuson, Laminova core type sandwich plate coolers. We're seeing in Atlanta when it was sunny, 90 out and pretty humid, we were seeing like 145. Maybe 160. Yeah, it's nothing. And I finally figured out why our driver was resistant to a water ice box. And it wasn't, he kept calling it complex and I kept fighting him on it. And it was more rules ordering something he thought he had to do based on the rules that I didn't realize he was thinking. So I think we're going to go to water ice, but yeah, I think there's enough power left on the table on fuel that we kind of wanted to go back and look at it.
Look at the Shell URT Advanced fuel. That was a fuel that was awesome back in the day, and they stopped making it back. It's been 5-6 years ago, but Gulf started producing it again, and man, that's probably one of the best fuels that I've ever tuned on, and it's unleaded. So,
yeah, I mean, personally knowing, because I'm not around the car all the time anymore, and there's times when he just like, my air fuels are way off. What's wrong with my tune? I was like, oh, okay. Well, in one case, I pulled it out and a connector on a O2 was melted because it didn't get tied out of the way. So I was like,
so your driver is actually looking at air fuels while he's driving? That sounds
no. So,
okay. I was just curious.
I actually have a fun story about Orlando when I got yelled at for a tune, and he came back and apologized, but it's a good thing we're friends. But no, when it sits there and idles and it's warming up and stuff like that, if anything's off, it causes him a ton of anxiety because he's worried about all the money he has in the car. But yeah, it's stuff like that. When he's driving, when I would actually care about data, no, he doesn't look at anything. That's why I data log. But yeah, so if anything's off, he freaks out. And I know he's not going to consistently pull and calibrate O2 sensors and stuff like that. So an unleaded for me would be a lot less stress and wondering what the car's doing if I'm not around. That said, this car may drive once or twice a season without me around ever. But yeah, it's at Orlando actually, it got a weird idle. And that just means it wasn't idling at 700. It was idle surging between 900 and 1200, and he freaked out.
Hey, guys, does anybody have a sense of whether MS-109 makes that much more power in a turbo application?
It doesn't.
Pump?
I was
just going to say, because on an NA deal, we made like 23 more horsepower with MS-109 over pump gas. So when Scott was with me that day, so I was just curious.
Right, and that was kind of, we're supercharged, so it's still boosted. So that was the one thing where I wasn't sure on MS or something like that if it really was going to be worth the change versus what we're running now on a boosted engine.
And honestly, on the turbo cars, I generally don't turn them up like we're trying to do on the NA stuff. And Bill, we're trying to squeeze out every last piece of horsepower we can, but giving up 20 on a tune on a turbo combo, probably not that big of a deal. And I was going to say now, hey, I have leaded fuels running on all kinds of O2 sensors that last multiple seasons, but these drift guys are sitting there bouncing off the limiter. There are probably a lot of times where there's raw fuel getting spit through the exhaust.
Yeah, that's why we're making it pop in the exhaust to make for the sounds.
Right.
And I'm really trying to stay away from leaded because that's
those fucking Hungarian judges. They like the sound.
I asked all our guys at Haltech about it, and they're like, "We know drag guys. They run leaded fuel. I have no idea what life you'll get out of a O2 on lead." So
you guys need nitro. You want to impress the judges? Nitro, just like a 10% mix.
Oh god.
Some BRC additive in it. Wasn't that the old nitro in a can? The BRC fuel additive?
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
Put some zoomies on it and get some flames out the zoomies too.
Well, it's a blower car. Why not?
Rules say the exhaust has to exit behind the axle.
That's not a problem. They can still come up and make big flames come out of them. Put an injector back in the tailpipe with a spark plug near it. Turn it on when you want flames.
I got to double check. I don't think that's in the rules, to be honest. To anything limiting that, I'd have to double check that.
And then people would just think you had a rotary in it.
I mean,
The flames would be kind of cool. You know, they need to do drifting on nitrous, man, and get the candles lit up and get about a 2-foot candle going. That'll get you some Hungarian.
I would say
points.
about half the teams run, a quarter to half the teams do run nitrous. Some of it's just turbo spooled, but I mean, Kyle Moen, you're talking rotaries. Kyle Moen runs I think it's a 3-rotor with 45 pounds of boost and some multiple of 100 shot on top of that. So yeah, that car's flames. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that run nitrous. So
well, yeah, we're going for the style points here now. It's time for flames and and loudness and all that good stuff. No, am I missing something?
A proper colored tutu, so that French judge gives you the right amount of points.
Good Lord, Bewley.
Oh man. I want to put
it's a good thing for you that Barnhill is more like Dahlquist in his demeanor than you.
I'm just gonna put all you guys in a drift car and film it one day, and
I know, right? And we'll look stupid, and you'll be like, "Oh, this is harder than I thought."
Yeah.
I completely admit that I would look like a dumbass driving a drift car. I make no bones about it. I might make one corner, but the first time you try and teach me how to make a transition, no,
Just let me go around in donuts. I'll be fine. I can do that. I just can't do the other stuff.
I might be able to set that one corner up and get through that first corner, but making a transition to go the other direction and shit.
Yeah. The biggest one I always love is like, I can slide a car. It's like, all right, now start 6 inches off that wall and do the same thing. We were entering, and that's what I was yelling at my driver. It's like, you're too far off the wall. And he was maybe 18 inches. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you need to be 6. And we had 118 mile an hour wheel speeds when we were entering.
Yeah. I mean, I give it hell,
but it still comes down to being a popularity contest.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. But
it's still automotive ice skating.
It's still people out there beating on stuff and breaking it.
I mean, I'm not trying to put it.
I mean, it's ice skating. We call it ice skating all the time. And
it's just
you have to get over it, and if you can't laugh about it, you're doing the wrong thing. I mean,
right.
Yep.
What's the equivalent of getting hit in the kneecap on that?
Man.
Somebody sabotaged.
You knew that was going to come out at some point, right? It had to.
Leaving the lug nuts loose.
I made this joke before about something like that, and our driver's 23, and he just looks because I was like, oh, it's like Madison Kerrigan or something. He just looks at me. And his girlfriend knew who it was, thankfully. And I'm just like, you have no idea who that is, dude. He's like, and he just looks at her and she starts laughing. He's like, should I? I was like, probably not, actually. But
man, that's when you know. That's when you know you're old. That's when you know you're the old man of the group.
Yeah.
You guys have no idea.
I know, but I'm starting to feel it, Bill. I'm starting to feel it. Unfortunately, I'm starting to feel it because I turned 40 this year.
Ooh.
Right, the big 40 is July of this year. So.
Fuck, I have underwear that's 40.
Fucking grandpa. But come on, that's I mean, I not like I've ever turned 40 before, Bill.
I get it. And then there's other
it's a little bit
decades to come up, my friend.
It's a little bit different from when it happened to you in 1973, okay?
I'm trying to do the math to figure out when that actually happened. But yes, you're right.
Break out the abacus.
I was a little bit, I was trying to make it a little bit over dramatic saying the 70s, but I figured it was only the 90s or so would be actual on that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh man. Yeah, we need to get Scotty Reed plugs on the nitrous motor for the Camaro.
Right, Perduto, you're lucky you better have me start reading plugs on your smart car first, man.
Isn't that more is there a ground strap there, yes or no?
Right.
With nitrous,
yes, it's going to be. It's going to be, is the ground strap yes or no? Okay, the tune was good. The tune was not good.
That's kind of the bonus of having too hot of a plug. At least you just melt the ground strap off and it won't fire anymore. It's not like you're going to hurt anything if you have too hot of a tune with too hot of a plug.
Well, then it depending on the fuel and if you got enough nitrous in it, it just diesels. That's not good usually.
Sorry, I'm sitting here doing remotes while we're talking tonight. We could probably wrap it up whenever you want. It's been 2 hours.
Yeah, so say hi to
it's
Amber
2 hours
and
in,
Thumper
man.
for us.
Who's that?
Well, you didn't say remote what? So
Oh yeah, right.
He's thinking you're at the North Phoenix Ballet doing a remote or some shit like that.
That's not what that is. No, I'm sitting here looking at a data log. Carl Scott just went out and hit the spray for the first time, so I'm looking at a data log.
Oh, now it's nitrous on top of the blower?
Nitrous on top of the blower. He's pretty hilarious. We reached the end of that blower in about 4 pulls. He's like, "Yep, turn it up." So his fallback is always the nitrous. Hold on.
Worst comes to worst, let's go put 1,600 pounds per hour on it.
What's cool is that first hit, that first 100 shot into one of them Whipple blowers is a lot more than 100 at the wheels.
It's probably like 250 on that damn hot bastard.
Yeah. Oh, it's right on the money. Look at that. Pulling out 15%. Yeah, Carl, you're clear for takeoff, buddy. Honey Badger's going to haul the fucking mail.
Put the 41 jet in it, Carl. The 41 jet.
He did a progressive. I don't even know if I'm supposed to share what he did, but that progressor's working like a boss. Yeah, that worked good. Good work, Carl. I wouldn't even change a damn thing. Might take out 10 pounds per hour. That's good.
God, did you see Lefevre's response there?
Yeah, ERC's not the fuel at Bonneville anymore. That's weird. That's been the fuel since I've been going there.
Yeah, VP Fuels now. It's good stuff. I want to be in the diner room when you're there. You're working on Timney's project.
Right.
So now we know what fuel we're talking about. And, talking about Honey Badger, it's like, who else is running that combination besides Carl?
I don't know anybody else that's got the Whipple blow on a drag car. Yeah. I don't know anybody else that's got that big honking ass blower.
Hey, dude, that thing leaves hard. He got that. He didn't have the right converter on there, he said, and that thing was leaving super hard in testing.
Oh, I know it was
3,700 pound pig, and it was quick 60 foots.
Those poor rods. Making that much
like 4,500 RPM.
Those poor connecting rods.
Right. All the torque at 2,500.
Right. Like, holy shit.
Carl Scott's on the
ain't scared. Yep.
Honey Badger ain't scared.
No.
Oh, we know that. I mean,
Carl, your log looks good, man. This is awesome.
I mean, after that picture I had of him in the sand car that I made the meme of, we know Carl's not scared of fucking nothing.
Scott, his tuner, sure is. Come on down to snake hunt this weekend.
You can go ride with me. I'm launching 30 feet in the air off a dune.
Right? No, thanks. This is why we team viewer.
Yeah. Not only know, but no.
That's right. Can't get bitten by a poisonous snake if you ain't there to get bitten by it.
Exactly. I was like, you just send me the pictures, and sure enough, 30 feet into the air. But yeah, Carl took his street car out for a spin and sprayed it. But yeah, so Mike, do you know about that project I'm working on with Mr. Timney?
I've seen it in person.
I'm going to meet the engine next week.
Oh, excellent.
Dyno Day at NASCAR place.
I know Timney's really looking forward to you being on board on that one for sure.
Hopefully. The motor burned up last year, so they wanted someone to babysit the team.
Yeah, they had some really, really high quality injectors in the situation that were just there for the ride, I guess.
Right.
So no pressure, Scott.
No pressure at all. No, I talked to the guys. I'm like, you realize you're dynoing this thing at 100 kPa. It's naturally aspirated motor, and we're going to take it down to like 75 kPa. Like, you better start making your poles at 3/4 throttle, but that doesn't really do it either because it doesn't show you what the VE's doing at on the exhaust side. So with the change in back pressure, but these guys are pretty sharp. It's well, I won't go into too much detail about it. It's a discrete type of job, but it's pretty badass. Some guys are putting a modern tech, smaller cubic inch cup car developed motor in a streamliner and trying to go over a certain record. Naturally aspirated at Bonneville.
Oh, so they're going to do a C motor with turbos. Okay, can I say that out loud? No, I can't say
no turbos.
No turbos. All natural
Then
aspirated.
who cares?
Yeah, no, dude.
But it's going to go really effing fast. That's
304 cubic inches. 304 cubic inches. And I don't know what it's going to make up there. It's going to make 600 horse at elevation, 650, something like that. So
300 cubic inches, is that a truck motor or what NASCAR category is that?
Small. It's the same people that build the R08 stuff right now, or it's a specific motor on that tech that's smaller cubic inch to meet that engine displacement class at Bonneville.
Yeah.
So it's a little out of their normal wheelhouse, but it's going to be a high rever and sound real good.
Yeah. What, 10,000? No, never mind.
It's probably a 9 to 10,000 RPM motor all day. Yeah.
Yep. Don't ask.
No, I guess, I'm not going to go into any more detail than that. We'll show it off.
I don't know if they even tell you, Scott. I don't know if they've told you or not, but I know. I don't even think Joe knows all the details of the engine. They're really
no. I got to get like some kind of security clearance while we're going to dyno this thing. Apparently,
no shit. Yeah, really.
So it's like a big deal. But I'm like, I'll come do it or whatever. No pressure. Well, that last guy, blah blah blah. I'm like, well,
The last guy wasn't there for what you needed.
One of us teaches for a living, and the other one teaches as a side job. Anyway, so wah wah. I'll make it right. I mean, I have one of the reasons they called me was because I did all of the Ray Barton naturally aspirated engines that did so well. And I mean, and honestly, we still hold the record. Lee Cecilio's car, it's the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. There's actually a pair of these cars. One of them, his first car, pretty much owns all the classic production and even the modern production records out there. So when you have a car that old, the 69 Charger Daytona automatically fits in the classic category. So he went and with Ray Barton power, naturally aspirated, just smashed all the classic records. And the car was fast enough to run against the modern swoopy production cars, right? The Aero. So there was something written into the rule books at Bonneville that says, hey, if you switch from carburation to EFI, you can take a classic body style and run it in a modern class. Why would you want to do that? Well, dude, in production and like AA Pro and A production classes, those are the classes that like Ford and GM and Mopar would come out as a factory effort some years to go smash, because it's always been a highly contested, it's first off, it's the door cars, it's the production body cars. And then it's, the rules are pretty cool. They're cars that look like cars, and it's hard to go fast out there with those. But this guy, I worked with Barton on the stuff out there, and we were very successful. Since 2007, I think I started working with that guy. I think we took like 11 records in that car and 2 records in the turbo car that he built. But a lot, just nonstop. We were in impound. We had a great run with that combo, and that was all Ray and David Barton power. They would build us stuff in the AA, A, and B engine displacement classes, which is stuff from like low 400 inches all the way up to unlimited size. So
AA is 500 plus.
Yeah. So he had like a 570 inch motor for that. And then, a high 4s and a low 4 something or other. And of course, it was based on Barton's super stock alternate Hemis to make them live a little bit longer. And it's been said that car is the best sounding car on the Salt. I need to find a link. If you Google or YouTube search Badass Superbird Bonneville, some guy just took a really cool video where really it's the audio that matters, and you can hear this Barton super stock altered Hemi based motor singing for 4 miles, a wide open throttle. It's fucking awesome. It's sound like nothing else because it's echoing off the mountains and it's early in the morning and no other engines are running anyway. It was a cool video. We'll put a link up to it. But so I know the NA stuff out there. I have some experience with that. I told him I'm not afraid. We'll figure out what it'll go and make it safe. But I just worry that the tune was way out in the ballpark when you get up there in the air. Mm-hmm. Things totally change. So we'll figure out what it wants. Keep it alive.
It'll be a good time for sure.
Oh yeah. Are you coming out there for that, Mike?
No, not this go around for sure. Yeah. So. Yeah. I gotta work for a living,
I hear you.
As soon as I can work for a living.
Work. No, and the other car we're going out there to babysit is the Cal Automotive Roadster. That car, they've worked out their steering bugs, and that That car has 330 mile an hour potential. If you guys have seen Andy Leach's car that they built that runs,
it's a roadster.
It's a blown gas modified roadster, but it's not a rear engine. But it's no, you know what? Is it a competition coupe? No, it's not a competition coupe.
I thought it was a competition coupe.
I don't think that it is. We got to go find out now.
It's the Aero. Those things have to work.
Yeah, it's overtime, but I mean, it's got a pretty healthy combo in it. So,
is that the swoopy looking thing you've been posting up?
Gray one,
the gray one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's comp coupe. Yeah,
that's a comp coupe.
Yeah. Definitely not a roadster because it's not a roadster; it's a coupe.
Right. It's got a
it's competition coupe.
Be a roadster.
Oh, it can go straight all the way down the track. That's good.
It's a sweet piece, man. Bob Thrash design, but they worked with Neil Roberts, aerodynamics guy who helped us on Cecilio's cars. And they worked with him. They did they did the actual modeling. They scanned the car, modeled it, put it through the digital wind tunnel, which it's not as good as the real deal, but it gets you real close if you got a guy who, Neil Roberts has worked on legit Formula One stuff. So, and he's like, the last I talked to him a few years ago, he's still the director of racing at Acura. He's like in charge of the factory race programs, which is cool. So, it's Comp Coupe. Brad Rorta set me straight on that. Thanks, Brad. My buddy Brad from Des Moines. Shout out to Brad and Duke Reynolds.
This car's for sale too. Anybody want to get in land speed racing?
Oh yeah, Brad Rorta. Okay, you spell his last name Roorda. Brad Rorta. They're selling a Calvin Smith built car, which is badass. I tuned on this thing in the early 2000s, but Calvin, if you don't know, Calvin builds a lot of very successful mile racing and land racing type cars. And Brad's got one. He's got one for sale right now. They've got two cars. But anyway, check out Brad Rorta or message me if you got questions about the car he's got for sale. It is is that a comp coupe as well?
It's a comp coupe or I think it was comp coupe or modified roadster. It comes with both bodies, I believe.
Right.
For like 17.5. Just drop your motor in and go 200 miles an hour.
Set up for a small block too. Yeah. No, that's a cool car. Those are neat, really well built cars too. If you know Calvin, he's the guy that I tuned this car for him when it had a legit Cosworth DFV double 4-valve. These are some of the most winning Grand Prix Formula One IndyCar engines from the 70s, right? And he used to run these at Bonneville with turbos, without turbos, mechanically injected or electronically injected. And I was fortunate enough to be able to tune on a couple of those for him. But
still
neat
the most
shit,
successful single engine platform at Indy and F1 in terms of total number of wins
ever, right? Historically,
kind of
yes, that's what I thought. Yeah. The Cosworth DFE. It really came with neat instructions on care and feeding of how to run that engine too. Just the startup procedure was like 2 hours long on that thing. Like you had to heat everything to certain temperatures. All the fluids had a target temperature. Then you'd spin it over without plugs in it for a little while. And then you'd put the plugs in it and then you'd start it. You'd have to maintain a certain RPM, to avoid mechanical clatter. The thing will just eat itself. Pretty badass. But DFE Cosworth, look up the Cosworth double 4-valve. Neat motor. So that's all I got. We should wrap it up. It's 10:08, man. Holy crap.
11:08 for me.
Yay.
Yeah, I've had enough for one night.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll wrap it up. Evans, you want to send us out, buddy?
Yeah, it's just after 8 o'clock. What are we doing?
Sure thing. I can do that. Let's, wrapping up. Everybody have a good night, and we will talk to you next week, all right? Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. July 13th and 14th, an advanced standalone tuning class covering various ECUs at Full Throttle Speed in Detroit, Michigan. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. And remember, don't forget to have your host spayed or neutered.